Okay. Hi. I'm getting ready for work. And I'm already running a bit late, so I thought it's my coffee machine. Let me give it a second. So I thought that while I pack up my lunch and get ready to go to work, we would talk about Fool's Errand a little bit because I'm like 25% in, roughly. And I have a lot of opinions on it. And I can't talk about it without spoiling the Liveship Traders and the Farseer trilogy. So I figure why not just do my full unfiltered thoughts on this trilogy as well, because we're already going to be spoiling stuff. Let's just keep going with it. Plus, I feel like when I do spoiler videos, that's when people actually are interested. And I love spoiler videos. So we're going to do a spoiler video. 3 shots of coffee in the cup. This is my favorite coffee creamer right now, is this Chobani cinnamon. It's my favorite. Anyway, so I've been struggling to read this one, like a lot, because I get like anxious over it. And I do this with things that I like really enjoy because I like don't want them to end. So I get really anxious over like continuing them. And I have to be like in this specific mood. So I've started to try to like remedy that by picking up the audio as well as the physical, because I wanted to read this one physically and read Robin Hobb with my eyeballs for once, but my anxiety around it is not letting me like actually read it, and then I get really excited over what I'm reading and I'm like, oh my god. So we're doing audio and physical depending on what my brain likes. Okay, let's talk. So Fool's Errand, we're following Fitz. Fitz is 38, or 35. So Fitz is like close to my age, which is great. It was the character in Bury Your Gaze that was 38. Anyways, Fitz is 35, which means Night Eyes is like 16 or 17. Night Eyes is old for a wolf, and he's coming through as old. So in the beginning of the book, we're starting with Fitz, and Chade has come to visit him. So that's our like catalyst, is Chade is coming to visit him, and Chade wants him to come to Buck Keep to teach Prince Dutiful the skill. Prince Dutiful is the son of Ketrican and Verity, but also kind of Fitz, right? Okay, because at the end of Assassin's Quest, Verity like inhabited Fitz's body with the skills so that he could have a kid for an heir. And that was weird, and Fitz was uncomfortable with it. And so Verity's son is like by DNA Fitz's son. So Fitz has 2 children out there. He has Nettle, who's his daughter with Molly, and then he has Prince Dutiful, who is his son with Ketrican. And Prince Dutiful has the skill. We don't know if he has the wit, but I have a feeling he does because of something that happened. So Chade wants him to come and teach the skill, but Fitz is traumatized over how he was taught the skill, and he's like, no, nobody should know the skill. Like, I can't. The skill is terrible. It's an addiction. Well, this man pounds elf bark tea, right? This man is an addict. Robin Hobb, as Literary Diversion said, loves a addicted leading man. So he turns him down, but they have like this great kind of like catch up, and it's because Starling, who the minstrel in the first series, took Hap, who is a foundling that Fitz took in that's roughly the same age as his children. And he raised Hap, took Hap into Buck Keep for a spring festival. So it was like Hap's first like experience at a festival. And so Fitz was on his own with Night Eyes, so Chade was able to come visit, and Starling probably knew about this. So Fitz turns him down. He's like, absolutely the fuck not. But they have this like great catch up, and then Fitz starts kind of longing for his old life. He's led a very quiet life for the last 15 years, and he starts this kind of longing for a life that he doesn't have anymore. And eventually he kind of gives that up because Hap comes back with Starling, and we find out that Starling is actually married, and Fitz has some really strong morals around that, and he's been hooking up with Starling over the past 15 years whenever she comes to visit. Not expecting it to ever be a relationship, but it was just something that they were both comfortable with because he didn't think Starling would ever be the relationship type. He's still like moony over Molly, which I have issues with because let her move on. And so he's like letting this relationship kind of like be a thing. But then he finds out that she's actually married, and he's like, absolutely the fuck not. I will not do this to another person. I would never want another person to do this to me. Of course, I thought that she like had other partners, but there was no like legal commitment or whatever. So Starling freaks the fuck out on him. She's kind of, I've never really liked Starling's characterization much, because I feel like there's better things we could have done with a character like her, but instead we have to like demonize her. But anyway, so she fucks off, and then Hap and Fitz are kind of going back about their life, but Hap is old enough that he needs to start some sort of apprenticeship so that he can have like a life of his own, right? And so Fitz is kind of dealing with like the whole, my child is growing up, my life is entering a different phase. He keeps talking about how he's an old man. Bro is 35. Like, he keeps talking about how he's an old man. So he's like dealing with all of that. They're trying to get enough money to get Hap an apprenticeship, and so Hap hires out for the summer. And during that time, that allows another visitor to show up, and that's kind of where I'm at. But in the meantime, there is a hedge witch that shows up. I think her name is Jenna, and she reads Fitz's palms, and his two palms show very different things. Life of a very different man. The lifeline on his left hand ends abruptly, and so does like the love line and everything with it. So she reads his right hand, and his right hand has a very long lifeline and has this love line weaving in and out of it. And I was like, ooh, that's the Fool, because he's like, the love of my life is Molly, and the witch is like, she's like, the love of your life is weaving in and out. Like, this is a great love. And I was like, it's the Fool. It's the Fool, because in Liveship Traders, when Paragon wanted a new face carved, and the Fool, in the skies of Amber, carved him a new face. He was like, carve my face into a face you could love. And Amber carved Fitz. It's Fitz's face on the Paragon, right? And I was like, oh my God. Like, okay, so Amber is the Fool, right? We don't know which is their real identity. Are they the Fool? Are they Amber? Are they something entirely different, right? Because right now, we've just been introduced to the Fool, and there's something entirely different. So I was already excited. This is the end of chapter like 6. Chapter 7 comes the Tawny Man, right? And it's this like tall, lithe person on a stunning horse, and with amber eyes. And I was like, fucking Fool, it's the Fool. Oh my God. So now we've had a whole chapter of them just like catching up and spending time together and just being like the greatest of pals. And the Fool is trying to convince Fitz to join him on a journey. Again, he needs his catalyst, right? That's what the Fool is always called. Fitz is the catalyst, and Night Eyes is starting to call him Changer again. But the most traumatic thing that's happening right now is that I am pretty sure Night Eyes is going to die in this book or the next book. Night Eyes is old, like I said, and I have a senior dog laying on the floor right behind me, and I'm like, can we not? I think that's part of why I'm like, oh no. But basically something just recently happened to Night Eyes. He like choked on a fish, and Fitz used the wit to inhabit his body and used some of the skill to like start his heart back up again. And so he's like, is this what Chade is talking about using the skill for healing, right? Because Fitz was never taught correctly how to use the skill. He was very limited in it. The coterie that he was in was like basically just trauma, and was completely abused. And I can't remember the name of the man who was supposed to be teaching them, but he was horrendous. And so Fitz is like, oh, this could be something, but he gets stuck. But the Fool has his like fingers touched by the skill from Verity, from when he touched Verity. And so he uses that skill to like pull Fitz out of the wolf. And so Night Eyes is pissed because Fitz invaded his body without asking him, and he's like, oh, get over it. And then he gets pissed. Then Fitz gets pissed because the Fool invaded his body. And I'm like, Fitz, why are you still the same person after like, you are 35 years old and you are still the most oblivious person? And there's like a quote from Night Eyes where Night Eyes is like, you're grown, but you're not grown. Like, he's like, you're older, but you've not grown up. And I'm like, oh, burn. Night Eyes' sass is making this book for me. So apparently we're going to start some sort of journey. And so what I'm wondering is whether Dutiful and Nettle have the wit as well. Because at one point, Fitz skill dreamed, I'm pretty sure, into Prince Dutiful, because he was in the castle, he was seeing all these things, and then he jumped into a cat in the dream. And I'm like, I bet that was because Prince Dutiful jumped into the cat. So I'm pretty sure that Prince Dutiful has the wit. And our whole thing is that in the background of all of this personal stuff, we have a rising up of the hatred of the people with the wit. They're calling themselves Old Blood. There was this, like, we got this kind of info dump, but I'm okay with the way that Robin Hobb does info dumps. I actually don't mind info dumps in general, to be honest, as long as they are, like, not the main character trying to, like, stealthily info dump. Just give me an info dump. It's fine, right? So just do it nicely. And Robin Hobb, I think, does it in a way that I really enjoy. So basically we find out that the Witted Ones are being attacked ever since people's, like, fear of the Red Ship Raiders kind of died down. People needed something to switch their anger to, and I think this is a thing that we see throughout history, and is why I like fantasy because of these things, because we can take real world stuff and put it in a form that's digestible. For some reason, society always needs somebody to blame for what's wrong with their life, right? So when they couldn't blame the live ship or the Red Ship Raiders anymore because the war was over, they started blaming the Witted Ones, and the Witted Ones fought back because Kettricken knows that Fitz is witted, and she knows what it is, and she's learned, and she's also from somewhere entirely different. So she's like, can we stop, like, attacking these people? And that just kind of made it worse, because now the Witted Ones are, like, standing up for themselves, because they're like, we have protection from the Queen, and then people are getting more, like, tough about their attack of the Witted Ones. So we have that going on in the background. So I have a feeling that's going to have something to do with whatever is happening, right? As a side note, I don't like how this audio narrator pronounces Kettricken, because he says it Kettricken or Kettricken. He calls her Kettricken. And I'm like, it's not Kettricken, it's Kettricken. He calls her Kettricken, and he pronounces Burrich as Burrick. And I'm like, it's a very different audio narrator than the first series. So Burrick pisses me off, and so does Kettricken. And apparently Chade has a Scottish accent, because I read the first chapter physically, and apparently Chade has a Scottish accent, and I'm not ready for that. So, but anyway, I gotta get going to work. We'll talk more later. Hi. I was just about to start sewing, and then I realized I have not updated you at all today. So it's Tuesday. Hair's a little messy, but I'm still liking it today. So I have finished now a few more chapters. I'm like partway through chapter 14. Hugo and I just had to go to PetSmart to get him his bedtime snacks. He's over there somewhere. There's his little butt. He's whining at me. I don't know why. So can this balance here? You're on my sewing machine. Maybe if I don't touch it, it'll stay. We'll find out. I'm about to start working on my shrug for the wedding. I'm hoping I can get it done tonight, soon. I probably won't, because it's 8:30. I need to actually, like, go out to the docks tomorrow. My boss called me and was like, hey, I know it's short notice, but can you come out to do some salmon sampling tomorrow? So I'm gonna go do some salmon processing out at the docks. Yay. So anyway, fool's errand. I'm at chapter 14. So I think the last time I checked with you, I was just about to start chapter 8. So 6 more chapters. I was right. Prince Dutiful is witted. So Fitz, Tom Badgelock, was about to head into Buckkeep to ask either the Fool or Chade if he could borrow money to pay for a apprenticeship for Hap. And as he was getting ready to leave, a rider came and snagged him and was like, bro, you've been summoned. So Chade needed him. It was kind of like a secret thing. It turns out Prince Dutiful went missing, and they don't know where he is, and they are hoping that Fitz can use the skill to find him. So Fitz is now back in Buckkeep, and Hap and Night Eyes are following behind, because Night Eyes is too old to make the journey that quickly. So Hap is taking Night Eyes into Buckkeep, and I'm like, Night Eyes and his old man legs. So yeah, that's pretty much what happened. And then, like, Fitz is kind of just dealing with the trauma of his, like, past life, basically. He hasn't processed, like, any of it. He just, like, went solitary. I understand it, and I'm really happy that he's getting called out a little bit by some of the people. And, like, in chapter 14, he's just realizing how nice he had it as, like, a child and a teenager, like, how easy his life was now that he's, like, been given coin to pay for things, and he's, like, not recognizable as, like, the king in waiting's bastard or any of that, right? He's a servant, and so he's realizing, like, how pleasant his life was when he was young. And he's also realizing that by kind of keeping Hap locked up, or I guess isolated. He wasn't really locked up because they're out in the middle of nowhere, but he was isolated. he doesn't necessarily have a lot of skills in the world necessarily, and he realizes that he's like kind of not done him right in that way, but he's trying to fix it. So it's really good to have him like back with Chade and have Chade like correcting him, but also have him like understanding what everyone tried to do for him, like coming to terms with that finally, like maybe gonna do some growing up, because Fitz, I let it go a lot in the first series because Fitz was a child. He was like 13 to like 17 or something like that. I guess he was 20 at the end of Assassin's Quest, because Prince Dutiful and Nettle are both 15, so, and Hap is like 15, so I guess he was like 20 at the end, but he still acted so immature. And I mean, I was in a lot of the lives with Literary Diversions where everyone was like talking about basically how it's not necessarily Fitz's fault that he wasn't like mature enough to handle a lot of the things, because he wasn't given the tools. Burrich did the best he could, but Burrich treated him like a puppy or a foal. Like, Burrich was like, I don't know how to raise a child, and he got stuck kind of raising Fitz, and then Fitz was kind of left to his own devices until like Patience showed up. And it wasn't until like Patience showed up and was like, why has he not had this and that, and why is he not educated? But Patience, in her like manicness, didn't really also know what to do with him, and so nobody knew what to do with Fitz. And it's like, it's kind of showing right now in that he didn't know what to do with Hap either. And I mean, he did some stuff, but it's not necessarily the right type of stuff, but he's realizing that, and it's kind of nice to have him realize that. The Fool stayed with him for like, had to have been like a month. The Fool stayed with Fitz, and they just like hung out like buddies and everything. And Fitz has now realized the only person he maybe trusts, like even like at the edge of where he's willing to trust, is the Fool. And I'm like, of course it is. Of course it is. Like, so it's kind of nice with that. I don't know, like, it's a lot happened but didn't really happen. I did get really emotional when like they were having the conversation about Fitz not being able to trust things, Fitz and Chade were, and Fitz was like, realized that he hurt Chade by not being able to trust him, but he's like, but I can't. And he was like, he told Chade, he was like, but I love you still, like, Chade cut him off because of men, but like, but still, like, it was really emotional, and I was like, oh, Fitz, your poor life, like, this poor man. And I saw a TikTok that I skipped past, and because it was like, sometimes with people's audio I just can't, and I know I'm one to say that with my audio not being great, but every now and then there's like videos that I want to listen to, but I can't, and so I skipped past it. But the beginning was like basically like the voices in Robin Hobb's head, and it was like, here's Fitz, you will create him good and gentle and kind, and then you will break him. I was like, yeah, pretty much. So we're gonna break Fitz again. And it's at the same time, his like stubbornness about things is like always such a struggle for me, because I'm like, Fitz, stop being so fucking stubborn. But he has a reason to be that way, but that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to let it bother me. Like, Fitz is an unlikable character in so many ways, but there are aspects of him that make him likable and make me, I don't necessarily like him. I don't really like Fitz, but I care about him. And I think that's really important when you have this unlikable character, because Fitz does so many dumb things. He argues about the stupidest shit. He's selfish in a lot of ways, and entitled in a lot of ways, and he's kind of grown out of some of that, but those characteristics make him so unlikable. But he's just such a bumbling like, he's a bumbling man, and that makes it hard. But also, he was so traumatized, and like, I don't like the bumbling man trope, right? But Fitz was so traumatized in his past life. Like, it is not his fault, and so I care about him, but I don't like him. But I've come to the realization that given these 3 series so far, so I've read the first one, I read the Liveship Traders, I'm working my way through this one, and from what I know from the next, I don't know much about the Rainwild Chronicles, but from what I know from, I mean, the last series is called Fitz and the Fool, right? The Fool is the main character of this world. All of the stories require the Fool to exist, all of them. And I'm like, this series is about the Fool, but not told from the Fool's perspective. And I think that is absolutely fantastic. They are the main character, but none of the books are about them. But they are the main character. They are the linchpin in everything. And that's because the Fool is the White Prophet, Fitz is the catalyst, right? But when the Fool didn't have his catalyst, he still had a story. He had a whole adventure with the live ships. And it didn't need Fitz for that at all. He had Malta. He named his horse Malta too. Anyway, I'm gonna sew, and I don't know if I have it in me to listen to more. This audio narrator is driving me crazy. I cannot with the audio narrator unless I'm like in the car, because oh my goodness, I can't handle the way they're pronouncing things. And Chade's Scottish accent, and Ketrican is French for some reason. French, because that makes sense. Sometimes I just can't with an audio narrator. So anyway, I'm gonna work on sewing this, and hopefully by the end of the week when I finish this book, I will have this to show you, and I might have a second one even. We'll find out. Okay, so here's what's happened. Fitz and the Fool caught up to Dutiful, kind of. They discovered like where people are being killed for being witted. They took Ketrican's huntswoman Laurel with them, and for some reason, when they managed to catch one of the people who had kidnapped Dutiful, it is a kidnapping from people who call themselves piebald, and they caught him, and Fitz basically had this like trauma response where he was basically going to kill this boy. The huntswoman Laurel, she disappeared with the boy overnight, and we're not sure why. There was like a whole bunch of stuff that happened in between because we're building up stuff, right? So a whole bunch of stuff has happened. But what I need to talk about is now we have found Dutiful. Fitz has tried to rescue him, and he's taken him through a skill pillar, okay? If you remember from Assassin's Quest, Fitz went into one of these before. Okay, I had to finish walking the dog. So Prince Dutiful has a very odd bond with his hunting cat. I'm now far enough in the story that I've got a little bit of what happened. So when Fitz and the Fool finally found him, they kind of good cop, bad copped him into telling them the story of what happened. So Fitz has got a little bit more out of him since he went through the skill stone. So I'm gonna not tell this in order of how we got the information, but in order of what happened. About 5 months ago, Prince Dutiful was gifted this hunting cat, and it bonded with him almost immediately. And that's when he learned he was witted, and he learned about the piebalds. The piebalds are old blood, witted folk who have a determination to kind of take over the government. So they're kind of trying to like rebel. So, but they're going about it in interesting ways that Fitz is not okay with. And Fitz, to be fair, is a loyalist, right? So that conversation aside, Dutiful learned he was witted when the cat started speaking to him. And then he essentially was kidnapped by these old blood because the cat and him would go out hunting every night. And one of the nights, the cat revealed to him the idea of this woman. And he fell hard for this woman, for the idea of this woman. Turns out the woman and the cat are the same thing, because the woman likely bonded to the cat when it was a kitten, which is frowned upon by the old blood. Fitz learned all of this when he spent the year with Black Rolf, who was someone he met in, I believe, Assassin's Quest. And him and Night Eyes spent a year learning about how Fitz and Night Eyes were pretty fucked up for bonding as young as they both were. And how their bond was considered disrespectful and tainted by the old blood, which is part of why Fitz doesn't like the piebalds, because the piebalds are perfectly okay with the fact that this woman is bonded to the cat this way, right? So the cat was likely a kitten, and this woman forced her bond, and then when she died, she went into the cat. So her soul is bonded to the cat's body, and she is as much the cat as the cat is her, which is basically a blasphemy for the old blood. They consider it absolutely disgusting. Black Rolf showed Fitz a woman who had done that with a deer, and now this woman has bonded the cat to Dutiful. Fitz thinks it's so that she can take Prince Dutiful's body, because then she can put the old blood in power and basically settle this old, what do you call it, rivalry between the piebalds and the Farseers, which is why I need to read the Piebald Prince. It'll be helpful. So basically that's kind of what's happened, and she is occasionally takes over Prince Dutiful's body because he was so young. Because she takes over his body and she is constantly listening to everything, Fitz can't divulge anything to him at all, because she will know everything. So then if Fitz can't kill her, Fitz can be outed as being Fitz and not Tom Badgerlock. So the other problem is that because of that, Dutiful doesn't trust Fitz at all. And so Fitz is trying to like hint at some things. Like he dropped a little crumb of, your father taught me to skill, right? Of Prince Verity taught me to skill. Okay, so now Dutiful is like, how the fuck do you, an old bastard and a liar, know my father, right? So Fitz has kind of left him to think on that, but he has accidentally skill imprinted on him the same way that he did Regal, and he's done it he said for Dutiful to stop resisting him. So Fitz was like, oh fuck. Like when he realized that he did it out of like, the woman was in Dutiful's body attacking Fitz, and Fitz was like, I need him to stop because she doesn't care if I physically hurt him, she's just going to keep trying to kill me. And he needed like, so out of like frustration, he instinctually skill imprinted on Prince Dutiful that he would listen to Fitz so that Fitz could get him to stop. And so now Fitz is like, I don't know how long this is gonna last. I fucked up. So it's Fitz fucking up again, right? Fitz and fuck up are synonymous. So, which is why we love him. But, so I'm pretty sure the other main thing is I'm pretty sure they're on the other's island. Because as they're walking along the beach, they keep finding things, interesting things. And I'm pretty sure they're on the other's island. And I'm pretty sure Fitz and Dutiful were put back together by a dragon. And I very distinctly feel like this because essentially when they went into the skill stone, Prince Dutiful learned what the call of the skill was, and he was like completely taken by it. So Fitz went into him, like skilled into him to try to put him back together, and Fitz got lost in the skill too. And then this like voice put them both back together. And we know from the Liveship Traders that the live ships can do that because they are dragons, and the dragons can do that, right? I can't remember if it was with Malta that Tintaglia did that, or if it was, I know that Vivacia, the dragon within Vivacia, did that at one point in, I believe, the last book, which I need to read Ship of Destiny again. I've read Mad Ship twice because I love that one. It's my favorite, but I haven't read Ship of Destiny twice, and so it's probably, I'm pretty sure it's in Ship of Destiny. It was with Kennet. Wasn't it with Kennet? I'm pretty sure it was with Kennet that Vivacia put Kennet back together, like pulled the pieces of him and put him back together. And then I think Paragon did it again in Ship of Destiny when Kennet was dying of that fever that Wintrow protected him from. I'm pretty sure Vivacia held Kennet together at one point, and then either Paragon or Vivacia did it in the end. But anyway, the live ships did it because they are dragons and they can do it, right? So I'm pretty sure it was a dragon, and the fool keeps asking Fitz. He was asking him questions about if he ever dreamed of being anything else other than just the wolf, right? And Fitz was like, I didn't tell him, but I had dreamt of being a dragon and of flying. And I'm like, oh, Malta did that with Tintaglia, right? So that's essentially implying that Malta and Malta's little brother, whose name I can't remember right now because he had such a small role in the book, but he became like Tintaglia's speaker and stuff, right? Like he could, like she was like speaking, they're whip bonded to the dragons, but in a different way. They can only do it with the dragons, right? And Malta became extremely whip bonded. And I'm loving the pieces of the dragon lore coming together. So that's what I need to talk about. Essentially, I have like 2.5 hours left of this book, and I am locked in. I'm probably going to try and finish it tonight. My oven just preheated so I can put my pizza in. I'm going to listen to this book and probably just like chill. I'm so exhausted. Okay, so when I checked in last night, I had not finished yet, but I finished last night. I ended up reading the last like 100 pages, I think, or close to that, or the last 70 pages, something like that anyway. I listened until I was done cooking dinner, and then I picked it up and read it physically, and I'm so glad I read it physically. Okay, so where did I stop off? They were on the other's island. Hi, Hugan. So they were on the other's island, and they got chased by one of the reptile things. Fitz was like immune to like the fear thing that they did to Etta in Liveship, but Dutiful was not. And so They managed to escape through the skill stone. It took them to another place briefly, and then they had to go back and then back again because the skill stones have different sides that take you to different places. When they got back, they ended up being trapped by the piebalds. Fitz did convince Dutiful that he was being used. It wasn't any easier for him, but he did convince him of it. And when they got caught, Fitz kind of had this plan that basically he would say that he would allow the woman in the cat's body to use the prince if the Fool and Night Eyes could go, because they had them and they like were pretty badly beaten. And so they kind of went with that ruse. And then the cat, basically when it came to the cat and the woman going to inhabit the prince, the cat sacrificed herself. She like told Fitz, kill me. And Fitz was like, what? And was like stunned, right? Because it's Fitz. And then she was like, kill me now while you have the time. And then Dutiful heard that and freaked out. So the cat attacked Fitz, like went at his throat and like so like was like slashing him up so that he had to kill the cat in order to save himself, because the cat was going to kill him. And so of course Dutiful saw this and like completely broke down because his cat now died. And so then this started this fight with the piebalds, and just in the nick of time, who comes to save them? Laurel, with the archer that they had kidnapped and a bunch of old blood. So basically what had happened is Laurel had left with the archer because she realized it was her cousin. Laurel was raised in a family of people who were witted, but she's not. So she has this like kind of minor resentment, but also this understanding. So she went to go get as many old blood as they could, rally, in order to like come fix this situation. Because what the leader of the piebald, Loudwine, I think is his name, was doing is essentially like it looked poorly upon, because they were using their bonds and using the animals in order for greater gain instead of having a partnership with them. And he was basically out for revenge against shit that Regal did in the first series. It's always fucking Regal. So that was all kind of happening. So that all happened, and then there was like a healer that came with them, and she kind of like patched up Night Eyes and the Fool and Fitz, and was dealing with Dutiful and his grief, because now he's grieving. And Fitz laid down with Night Eyes, listened to the whole story of everything that happened, and the two of them fell asleep together, and Fitz woke up to Night Eyes dying. And it was so emotional to read, and it was done so well. I was gonna read it, I was gonna bring it down and read it, and I forgot. But basically Fitz wakes up to see the world through Night Eyes' eyes, like happens, and it's this beautiful morning, and Night Eyes is like, it's a great day for hunting, and Fitz is like, let me sleep just a little bit longer, we haven't slept, like sleep with me a little bit longer. And Night Eyes is like, no, it's prime hunting time. And so Fitz rides his mind out, and they go out into this beautiful field, and there's like field mice and stuff, and Night Eyes is looking around, and he spots this big buck, and he's like gonna go after it, and Fitz is like, hold on, don't go after the buck by yourself, I will come with you, get me up. And Night Eyes is like, as usual, brother, I have to go ahead of you, and I'll be basically beating you there. And Fitz sits up and yells, wait, and that's when he realizes that like Night Eyes is still like with him, like, but gone. And it's actually pouring rain outside, and I was like, oh my god, like I'm getting emotional talking about it, because of course as I'm like reading that, like my senior dog is like watching me intently, because border collie. But it was like the most like loving send-off, as well as like heartbreaking, right? So Fitz is just like heartbroken. He kind of goes through the day in a phase. Him and Dutiful are grieving at the same time. And so Fitz the next day, because he realizes that because he's an adult, the old blood aren't going to help him the same way that they're going to help Dutiful with his grieving, and also in the fact that he's an outsider in a lot of different ways. So he mourns Night Eyes in the way that Burrich mourned his animals when they passed. He builds a pyre, and he keeps it burning until Night Eyes is completely gone. And the old blood don't like this. It seems like they like to build cairns and bury their like partners. And so they don't like this, but he does what Burrich did. He cuts off all of his hair. He puts his hair to burn with it. The Fool adds some of his hair. And it was like this big emotional thing. And so the last like 50 pages are Fitz like grieving Night Eyes while Dutiful is kind of like creeping towards him. And Fitz is like, he's just trying to look for someone because he's lost like his bond. And he's like, I did that the same with Burrich when Burrich took Nosy from him in the first book. And but he realizes that maybe it's a little bit more. And so him and Dutiful end up having this conversation, and Fitz finally agrees that he'll maybe help Dutiful with the skill, but Dutiful also wants his help with the wit. And Fitz is like, I'm not someone who can teach you. And they have this whole conversation about how he might not be a teacher, he might not be the best teacher, but he's the last one as far as the skill goes. And he knows more about the wit than Fitz knows, and he's probably the only person who knows how to deal with the will and the wit and the skill intermingled. He's probably the only person. So that kind of happens, and then we kind of go through the end of the book as normal. This, I think, is actually one of Robin Hobb's better endings. I think she really struggles with endings, but I think this one ends pretty well, where Fitz basically makes the agreement with Chade, and again we get this emotional scene where Chade is like, basically Fitz has to tell Chade, if I help the prince, I will no longer be reporting to you, I won't be your spy, because my loyalty will be to him, and I will not be divulging things that he tells me to you. And he's like, and that's when I knew I broke Chade's heart. And Chade gets up and he's like crying, but he's like excited. He's like, good. He's like, when I'm gone, there will be someone for the prince still. And I'm like, oh no, we're gonna lose Chade in the next book, aren't we? Like, and like Fitz kind of doesn't understand that, but he does at the same time, because it's Fitz and he's so fucking dumb. He's the most lovable, unlikable character I've ever had. And so this kind of all happens, and then Laurel and Fitz kind of have like a tenuous kind of like relationship. Fitz goes to check on Hap with Jenna. Hap stayed with the Hedge Witch, and she's like, you got to talk to him. He's like supposed to be doing this apprenticeship, but he's out all night and he's with this girl. And she's like, so what are you going to do? And Fitz was like, I think I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to let him learn this lesson on his own. He is old enough to make mistakes. I'm going to allow him to make the mistakes that I wasn't allowed to make. Fitz made so many mistakes. He was allowed to make so many mistakes. But he's like, he's not a prince. He doesn't owe anyone anything. Like, if he wants to make a bad choice and give up this apprenticeship for this girl, that's his choice. Let him learn. Let him make a mistake and then learn from it. And instead of me bullying him and telling him what to do, like, and I'm like, oh, Fitz, there's an in-between, my guy. You could have a conversation with him still and be like, just so you know, you're going to be responsible for these mistakes. Okay, so I was doing that really nice video yesterday to wrap this all up, and my boyfriend was ready to go sooner than I was. So I had to stop. I think I kind of got pretty near the end, because I believe I was talking about Chade and how he was really excited that like Fitz was willing to be there for Dutiful when Chade knows he's getting up there in years and he's not going to always be able to do that, and like how emotional that made him, and how it was maybe just kind of settling on Fitz at the end of the book. And then the epilogue really sets us up to go into the next book, and I was so excited about it. Basically, like, Fitz shows up. It's like another journal entry from him, and it's kind of like how he talks about how he thought his goal was to like write the history of the six duchies, and he returned to his cottage to like his writing like destroyed and like strewn about and all this stuff. So it won't be long for me until I get into the Golden Fool. I'm very excited for this. Hugin's cleaning himself. He just had dinner, so he's rubbing his face on the floor. Very glad that I'm going to be mopping. I look terrible, and I was like, I looked so cute yesterday. Okay, at least it looks a little better down. We'll take it down. So, anyway, yeah, that's kind of my like long form review of Fool's Errand. I am so glad I got back into this series. I really needed it. I'm so stoked to continue. I leave for the UK in 1 week. I'm basically, since I'm done with this, I'm gonna clean my kitchen, do my dishes. I gotta run my mop. I'm starting to get ready to go. Like, I'm gonna go through the fridge and start cleaning stuff out, because I've got a week left. And then, so I'm gonna bring Golden Fool on the plane with me. I might bring both just in case I end up finishing Golden Fool so I can start Fool's Fate on the way back. I think that's what I'm up to. I do have a couple other books that I want to finish, so we'll see, but my plan is to bring Golden Fool on the plane. That will be my plane book. So August 5th is when I'll be starting that. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I am so glad I read it. It was so heartbreaking, but so well done. I'm so happy to be back with Fitz and the Fool. I'm so sad I won't have Night Eye's sass though. And I'm just kind of hoping that like Fitz bonds to another like sassy animal. I need some sass. The Fool is pretty good about sass, but if they have to put on this like Fool and Tom Badgerlock charade, I need some sass. I need some sass. And Night Eyes was so good with that. So I'm really hoping we get some dragons. Some dragon sass would be really good. Like a Tintaglia type sass would be so good. So anyway, if you've read The Fool's Errand, feel free to comment. Let me know. Let me know your opinions. Let me know how much you cried over Night Eyes. And if you made it this far, let's, I don't know, maybe do a wolf emoji. If you made it all the way to the end to see my terrible outro with my terrible hair. So thanks for sticking around with me, and I'll see you soon with something else.